plug it in. Don't be lazy. Go ahead. It's not going to take long. It takes exactly 5 minutes.
And too noisy.
Not to make no noise.
Welcome back, Rabbi.
You can do it. You can do it. There's water there. There is water in the faucet.
So that I know. No problem. It's too noisy.
Yeah, no air.
Can I have a cookie?
No, thank you. You don't want me to start coughing. I'll have to tell you about my cough
Ah,
afterwards.
how are you?
Probably getting old.
Good evening. Erev Tov. Welcome. This week we have a very beautiful Parsha finally. Oh, it was getting difficult the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks it was difficult. Only sorrows and problems. Finally we're getting to some happy discussions. Avram is going to get born. How do they say in Hebrew? Maspik. Maspik means enough. Enough with all the trouble. From beginning of creation till now, we only studied about tragedies, with trouble, with corruption, with dirt, with... Right? Basically, that was the Parsha still now. And now we're entering the third Parsha. The Parsha of Lecha. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about this very point we just made. Why is Lech Lecha so late?
Because we had to have creation first.
Of creation, we'll go to Avram. This is exactly what we want to talk tonight. A little bit. I don't think there's any more sad historical document than Parshas Bereshis and Parshas Noach. Anybody who studied last 2 weeks Parshas sees how dark and how sad and how corrupted humanity can get. People can get. The first two Parshas share about 2,000 years of history from the beginning of creation. Like Pirkei Avot says, Alpaim Shana mi Adam ve'ad Noach. 2,000 years was from Adam until Noach. Right? 2,000 years. And you see, people kept on going lower and lower and lower and more corrupted and more corrupted. This is not a past, one person sinned. One village, went down. One city. Las Vegas somewhere. No. The ganze Welt. The whole world is corrupted. All people are corrupted. Everything is bad. the whole thing ends up to being one big disaster. Just the end of last week's Parsha. After we read in the beginning, Kimala Oretz Chamas, the world is filled with corruption. God is bringing the Mabel, He brings the flood, right? So you think, okay, we had the flood, fine, they got a message, the world now became purified and clean. No. What happens right after the flood? Last week we were all in shul together reading it.
Big tower.
Building a tower. You know what? Let's become God. Let's fight them from on top. I mean, what is going on? What is going on with humanity? How crazy it is. Matter of fact, let me take a look in last week's Parsha. Where is that? in Noach. What does Hashem say? Sorry, in the end of Bereshis, first of all, the last chapter, last few verses in Bereshis, and chapter 6, verse 5. And even before, chapter 6. Something happens there with the people are looking at the woman, and weiter, again a corruption, right? Again something bad happening. We don't understand exactly what it means. There's a discussion among the commentaries. Who are those Bnei Elokim? The men began to multiply, and then it says the sons of nobility, Bnei Elokim. This is people, children of some very important people, were violating the daughters of the common people because they were beautiful themselves, whatever. A whole story, Rashi says, terrible things. No, but Rashi says what happened with those Bnei Elokim. Rashi says that each time before there was a wedding, they had weddings. People got married. For the wedding, those members of the noble families came in, took away the bride before the groom has any opportunity, violating them first. That's what Rashi explains. Is actually the story of verse 2 in chapter 6. Vayiru bnei Elokim es bnei Sa'adam, and the sons of Elokim, which Elokim does not mean God, Elokim means noble, like masters. They saw Bnei Sa'adam, the daughters of common people, Ki toivois eino, because they were beautifully themselves. When were they beautiful? They were beautiful, Rashi said, at their wedding nights. Vayikcholoem, and they took them for themselves, whoever they choose, even married women, males, and animals, and married women, and the whole thing is meshugah. Vayomer Hashem, says verse 3. Then God said, Lo yoden ruchi ba'odam lo'olam. My spirit will not remain in conflict over men for a long time. This is the Rashi's explanation. I'm not going to be conflicted and keep on thinking, should I destroy them? Shouldn't I destroy them? Should I destroy them? Furthermore, Hashem says, B'shegamu basar. He's only flesh. And while being flesh, so you think, being flesh, the person is going to consider himself a little humble before God. God is infinite. God is eternal. And you're a human being that only lives 120 years. So b'sach hakol, you only have that amount of years to live. Be a mensch. Be episnormal. And God says, I see, no, there's no one to talk to. Then there's another event. And then finally comes verse 5, and Hashem says, okay, verse 6, God said to himself, Ki rabo ras adam ba'oretz, I see that man's wickedness on earth was increasing. Everything that came from his heart throughout this day was purely evil. That's what people are thinking about. They're only thinking to do bad things. Only negativity. Only destruction. And God was consoled by the fact that He had made man upon the earth. He regretted ever making them. To the point when He said, I will wash them away. I will wipe them out from the face of earth. Adam, Be'emo, Remes, everything, cattle, creeping things, birds, they're all corrupted. They're all crazy. I regret ever making them. That's what happened in Bereshis. Commentaries say God said to himself, listen, I'm giving you 120 years. It's not a lot of years. 120 years is not a lot of years. If you compare it to the years of Mesushelach, right? How many years did Mesushelach live? We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years, right? How many years? 980.
No, 967.
967, whatever. He definitely lived 900 years. Right? He lived many, many years.
969.
Exactly.
Oh, Baruch Hashem.
There's a table in the
That's because they were vegetarians.
Welcome. Man lives after God changed the original program, and their life became to be just 120 years. So the Malbim, one of the classic commentators says, God said to himself, I assumed that when a man is going to realize that he only lives 120 years, he's going to make sure to try to make the best out of it. It's a short life. And nevertheless, 120 years, this is not more 900 years. If you live 900 years like Mr. Shelach, so you say, okay, let me have 300 years of fun, 300 years of corruption, and maybe the last 300 years I'm going to go to synagogue and do tshuva and start acting like my grandfather did. 120 years before you turn around, 120 years pass. So God says, only 120 years. And look what's going on. Garnished. Full corruption. This is in Bereshis. And then you go into Noach. This is still fresh in our memory. Everybody learned Noach, and everybody knows how difficult Noach of a Parsha is. When finally God decides to destroy everyone, to get rid of everyone. The best description, go have a seat, Moshe, right here. The best description, if you want to know about the difference between these three portions. Now, only the three portions from Bereshit. Bereshit, Noach, and now we're holding Lecha, the third one. So if you want to hear a wonderful, beautiful description, the difference between these three is actually the way the Rebbe writes it down in this book called Hayom Yom. What does the Rebbe say in Hayom Yom? On the 3rd of Cheshvan, the Rebbe says like this: Bereshis is a freiliche sedra. Okay, he says Bereshis is a cheerful parsha, even though its ending is not at all pleasant. It's not at all that pleasant, like we just read. Actually, there's a few other unpleasant situations in Bereshis. The first assassination takes place in Bereshis. Cain kills his brother Hevel for absolute no reason, just for jealousy, as we're going to discuss in a moment. Noach as the flood. Right? As the flood. It's not a happy story. But the week ends at least in a happy note, the birth of Avram. So the Rebbe, the real joyous week is Parshas Lech Lecha. This week's Parsha. Why is Lech Lecha so exciting? We live every day of the week with Avram. The first to dedicate his very life to spreading godliness in the world. Finally, we are getting to something good. Avram. 2,000 years in two portions, all bad. More or less. We have to get finally to Lech Lecha to realize there is something good. What is good? There's Abraham who discovered God. God speaks to him and he follows and he listens. So this is the question. Why does the beginning have to be so bad? Shouldn't it be vice versa? Let's start off right. God would have created Abraham in the beginning. This is the sample of humanity. This is a good person supposed to look like. This is the way a mensch looks like. Look, Abraham, Shane the Yid, a beautiful person, has a wife, Sarah, builds a family, doesn't kill anybody, doesn't destroy, is not corrupted. And then there is a glitch. Here and there comes a Noah, comes a flood, comes a Mabel. That would have made sense. That would have probably made much more sense to start with the birth of Avram rather than starting with so much, it's like you're starting Parsha 1, like where are we heading here? Parsha 2, somebody who doesn't know, never studied the Torah, after the second Torah portion, he would never come back to shul again. I don't want to be a part of such an angry God or such a corrupted, such a mess, such a messy job. Right? It's not like it was one car came out wrong, or like one line of a whole program. One line, had the asking for a return because something ended up. This is the whole system. When the get-go is so corrupted that God has to bring it to an end by the very flood, the Mabul, right? He has to finally destroy it. In 770, the Rebbe synagogue was all kinds of people. People who we know they are, people who were nameless, somehow they ended up there parked, like in what we call here homeless. People, neshamas, souls which were somehow, drawn to 770, the Rebbe synagogue in Grand Heights. There was a man in my days, they called him Zalman the Shiker. Zalman the drunk. What is Zalman the drunk? He was always drunk. 24/7 he was drunk, from Sunday till Shabbat. There was no difference for him. He had always a bottle, the small bottles, in his bosom, taking a little seat, falling asleep on a bench, and, maneuvering himself. No one bothered him really. But we called him, his name was Zalman, we knew Zalman the Shiker. He never passed away already. So Zalman the Shiker, from time to time, used to say something. He used to make a statement or express himself in some way or another. And to be surprised, his lines were actually very authentic, something that you don't hear from anybody else. So I remember that the 1 week he was actually walking around 770, from one slumber to another sleep, and he expressed the following. I don't know how many here read Rashi, but the first Rashi and the first words of the first verse in the Torah, Bereshis bara Elokim. Says Rashi, Omar Rab Yitzchak. Rab Yitzchak said, Lo haya tzarich lehatchil. The Torah. The Torah shouldn't have need to be started with the verse Bereshit. The Torah should have been starting with a commandment, which is what we have later in the Torah, the Jewish calendar. This is Rashi's first expression in his entire commentary on the Torah. So what is the words? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Lo haya tzarich lehatchil et haTorah. The Torah shouldn't have to start with the following. And Zalman the Shiker walks around and he says like this, Bereshis, Omar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Lo haya tzarich. So, it wasn't necessary. He didn't continue the entire paragraph. It wasn't necessary to begin with that. It should have begun with something else. Zalman said, it wasn't necessary. Back to sleep. The whole thing wasn't necessary. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Lo haya tzarich. What are you doing it for? That was a saying by Zalman the Shikar, let his soul rest in peace. Why are we starting an entire chumash, an entire story, an entire parsha with something which is so bad, so corrupt? Matter of fact, if we want to analyze a little bit how bad Bereshit Shmois Vayikro is, forgive me that I'm concentrating on the negative, but just to emphasize the fact, you know there's a famous saying in Pirkei Avot, we say it all summer, and it says there are three things which can drive a person out of the world. There are three things which actually drive a person out of this world. Meaning it causes you destruction to yourself, to the people around you. What are these three things? Hakina, ve'ataiva, ve'akavoid, moitzin es ha'odam min ha'olam. Jealousy, pleasurable desires, and looking for honor is what drives a person out of the world. Let me find it a second way it's written, so... No. You see it every day, and then when you need to find it, suddenly it gets lost in you. Give me a second. Akino, Ve'ataiva. No, which chapter is it? Supposed to be chapter 4. No, wait. Oh, chapter 4. Mishnah 21. Rabbi Lecha Rabbi Lecha says, Akina, envy, ve'ataiva, lust, L-U-S-T, lust, ve'akavoid, and honor seeking, looking for honor, drive a man from the world. That takes you out of this world. Three things. When you learn the Chumash and you see that these three things is actually the three major situations that is being discussed in Bereshit and in Noach till we finally get to Avram. What is the first story? Adam is created. Corruption number one. The downfall. What happens? He goes and he eats from the tree of knowledge. What is the idea of eating from the tree of knowledge? Simply pleasure, giving in to his inclinations, temptation. That's it. Taiva. This is what we call lust. As we discussed, it wasn't needed. It wasn't expected from Avram to be from Adam to be in control for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month. Sachakol only was expected from him 3 hours. You know that the whole thing happened in 3 hours on Friday afternoon. The whole thing. From the moment he was created till he squeezed himself out, a what's it called, a grape to make Kiddush from the tree of knowledge. 3 hours. Lust. They're being created in the afternoon, at the 7th hour of the day. 2 hours later, God takes Adam and he passes them by the trees of Gan Eden, and he tells them, Adam, I want you to know, you can eat. You can eat. He doesn't start, don't eat. You can eat from all the trees which are in this garden. You can eat. He doesn't say don't eat. He starts first with the allowance. You can eat from all the trees in the garden. There's one single tree that don't want you to eat. That's called what? The Etz Hadat. And then the snake goes into action and he gets him enticed. You're going to become like God. You're going to know good from bad. And what does the verse say? Vatero isho kitoivo eitz lemachol v'chitavo ilo einayim. She looked at the tree and said, "Ooh, it looks good." Lust. It looks good. And for that look, she was ready to violate and to get her husband, and the rest is history. Time. What happens the second major event? Is kina. Envy. Envy. Cain has a brother Hevel. Cain is the firstborn in the family. Hevel is brother number 2. Want to take hot water? Maybe the ladies have hot water, dear?
I'm okay.
I can bring you a cup of hot water.
No, he doesn't want.
I'm okay.
He has something against water tonight. Don't ask me what.
What?
He has something against drinking hot water tonight. I don't know. I offered him to fill up a whole pile and to make water for everybody. He didn't want. Not sure what the issue is. Cain and Hevel. What happens to Cain and Hevel? There's an older brother, Cain, and there's a younger brother, Hevel. Okay? He was a wonderful man, Cain. So that Cain was missing something. When he was born, why did they call him Cain? You know what his mother said? Why am I calling him Cain? Cain comes from the word I had acquired. Kaniti. She says, Kaniti ish im Hashem. I had acquired a partnership with my man and with God. I gave birth to a baby. She realized what kind of gift this young man is Cain. Hevel was baby number 2. Actually, the name of Hevel doesn't represent too much greatness. You know what Hevel means in Hebrew? That's the first word that King Solomon is writing in the book of Kohelet. What do you call Kohelet in English? Ecclesiastics. What is the first word that he writes, King Solomon? Hevel havolim amar Kohelet akol Hevel. Vanity of vanities, the whole world, everything is vanity. What is the word he uses? Hevel. Hevel is actually the word for vanity. What is vanity? Gurnish mit gurnish. Twice gurnish is Hevel. So if you compare the name of Hevel to the name of Cain, Cain personifies much more greatness than the name Hevel, right? Hevel means garnish. Yes, later we find out that Hevel lived a life which he was ready to view worldly acquisitions as nothingness. So it ended up being that in the spiritual accomplishment, Hevel was reflected by the name Hevel, that he was ready to view the world as nothing and ready to give to God the more important things and the minimum to keep to himself, right? That's what the story ended up being. But either way, Cain is a wonderful, wonderful, a good-looking boy, the first boy who was ever created, right? Can be better than that. And then, what happens? God somehow accepts Hevel's gift before him. It's not that he didn't accept Cain's. He took Hevel's before. Makara is the end of the world. This is it. Gotta come up, take your brother, kill him, put him in the earth. What is that called? What is that called?
Murder.
That's
That's the act. But what motivated that murder?
Because his
Jealousy. Kina, envy. That's the second thing which drives a person out of the world. Then came the Tower of Babel. kavod, seeking honor. Okay, God is fighting with us, He brings us a flood. Instead of taking the message normally and to say, okay, time to become a mensch, what do? No, that's it. I'm going to become like him. Let's figure out where he lives. I'm going to buy myself an apartment right next to him. Building a tower, the Tower of Babel. I'm going to climb up. We're going to become neighbors. That's it. I'm not going to let God be up there and we down here. Covet. That's what the Medrash says. The Medrash says that, you know, the generation of dispersion, we're actually saying, he took the heights to himself, and for us he presented these lowly worlds. Let's build a tower, place an idol there, give a sword into the end of the idol, and this is going to represent our war against, God forbid, against. And that's how the Parsha of Noach continues. Finally, we're coming to this week's Parsha, Lech Lecha. And what happens on Lech Lecha? Oh, our mood is all becoming revived. Sido Avram, Vayomer Hashem al Avram, Lech Lecha mi'artzecha. 75-year-old man is living his comfort of home, gives up his personal desires, ready to center around God. What is whatever Hashem, maybe leave some account, I don't know, whatever it is. And whatever God wants me to do, that's what I'm going to center myself around. It's not about me, it's about Him. Everything is God-centered. By the way, I was learning this afternoon a beautiful piece of Zohar. The Zohar speaks about this story in this week's Parsha where Avram's wife is being kidnapped, right?
Right.
In Egypt. Before he comes down to Egypt, he tells her what? Make sure to tell that you're my sister, not my wife, because if you're my wife, they're going to kill me. So I'm going to be protected, and I will figure it out. You know, they would not take a woman for my husband. They would kill the husband first. But if you're my sister, they might take you but not kill me. Okay. Like, you know, protecting his life, maybe pikuach nefesh, we know to protect life overrates all the laws of Torah, including the law of saying the truth. Good. But what the Zohar is putting out there, it says, he didn't just say that my life is going to be spared. I'm going to survive because you're going to say you're my sister. What else did he say? And they're going to provide me a lot of wealth because of that. And the Holy Zohar says, Avram? That's what Avram cares for? Money? Wealth? Not only that, at the time that he is dealing about survival of his wife and the dignity of his wife, so he said, well, and because of you, by saying you're my sister, that's how at least, not only I'm going to be saved, I'm only going to get a lot of money. Avram, come on, what's going on with you? This is the man of God. And you know what the Zohar said? Unbelievable. The Zohar says that since Avram was told by God, when God told him, Lech Lecha, he gave him a bunch of blessings. I'm going to make your name magnified. You're going to become a source of blessing. And as Rashi explains, God promised him a lot of money too. Avram knew, which we all know now because it says in the Talmud, but Avram knew it where the Talmud knows it from, that the blessing in a Jewish home comes in the merit of a wife. That's what the Zohar says. The blessing in a Jewish home comes through the wife. She is the channel for the blessing. Avram, wanting to make sure that God's blessing is materialized, turns to his wife and he says, that promise of God also has to happen. We can't desecrate God's name. Everybody knows that God told me I'm going to become wealthy. And we all know that my well depends on your well-being, and therefore you have to exist. And for you to exist, and for me to exist and earn all this money, which people are going to realize that God's blessing is fulfilled, I need you to say you're my sister. This is what the Zohar says. Which means, in other words, every step of the way in Avram's life is all about selflessness. The mission should be fulfilled. The mission should be accomplished. Circumcision takes place this week in the Torah portion. An old man, over 90 years old, gives himself a surgery. Right? This is the story of this week's Parsha. Because what? Because God told him. Nothing else. This is not going to increase his sex drive. This is not in any way going to make his life better. This is going to be whatever it is because God said it. I need to do it. Everything in this fixed Parsha is about Avram doing the good things. He is the good man. He is the sample, the example. Echad oya Avram. Avram was the one and only. And when does the story of Avram come? It comes after all that. The truth is, the question is not only about Avram, why Lecha comes after Bereshis and Noah. The question is about every person who is in this room. If you were bar or bat mitzvah, you know on what age it happened? For a boy it happens at 13, for a girl it happens at 12. What happens when you turn bar mitzvah? This Shabbos we're going to have in Shul by us 2 bar mitzvahs, God will. Okay? A woman came in today to Shul to register her son for a bar mitzvah next year, Lech. So I said, ooh, we have 2 bar mitzvahs Lech. Who knows how many, by next year Lech, I told you, we might have more than the 2 bar mitzvahs. Ellen Cohen is doing a bar mitzvah, Pablo, Lech next year. And this year we have the 2 bar mitzvahs. You're all invited, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, you're all invited. And what happens at 13? What happens at 13? So it says in the Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch says, what happens at 13, this is the time that finally your neshama, your godly soul, is finally integrating into your body. When you were born, there was the initial entry. Just a little entry. For a boy who had a Brit Milah circumcision, continued yet another step. But every single man and woman have to wait till 13 and 12 till finally get the Holy Soul completely in them, and only therefore you're becoming obligated to do your mitzvot by 13. Why would you exam till now? What happened? Because as long as the godly soul is not fully a part of you, you don't have to follow it. At least you have an excuse. Right? Bar mitzvah means the integration of the Holy Soul into the person. And same as bat mitzvah. So you can ask the same question. 12 and 13 years I have to walk around just with an animal soul? Wouldn't it be nicer to start up right? What's this concept of starting up lowly and starting up bad and only eventually being introduced to something better? The same question that we asked about Bereshit and Noach. Why is it that Bereshit and Noach come first and only afterwards is when Lech Lecha is being introduced to us? Is the same question that we have to ask ourselves about our own self. Why is it that we are born one way and only after a while we are being finally introduced to a neshama, to a fully godly soul? Let's start up right. And 13 years later tell us, you know what, there is something else which exists. And then I will make a choice. Do I want to deal with that? Am I interested in that? We're telling our kids, we want you to follow the mitzvahs. He says, Allah, 13 years I didn't have a godly soul. So let me give respect to the one who was here first. Who was there first? The animal soul was there first. Right? You have to give kavod to the elders. The elders. King Solomon refers to the Yetzer Hara, to the evil inclination, Melech Zaken Veksil, an old foolish king. He's old. He's older than the godly soul. He's older than godly soul. There's a verse in Kohelet, Antrizilistic, whatever you call that. I can never get it straight in English, but it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Kohelet, right? The book of King Solomon. In chapter 4, what does he say? Tov yeled misken vechacham. It is better to be with a good child and smart, a child but smart, good and smart, mimelech zaken veksil, than to spend your life with an old foolish king. Here's a king and here's a child. Be with a kid who is good and smart than the king who is old and foolish. I think it's all written in, as a metaphor. So the Medrash explains that who is that young, good child? That's the Yetzer Tov. That's the good inclination. And who is the old and foolish king? That's the Yetzer Hara. Because why is he called young and he's called old? So the Medrash says, because the first one is the Yetzer Hara, and when the Yetzer Tov is about to enter, the old one is already, the first one is already 13 years old.
Who's our brother?
What?
He's our brother.
Without?
No, he's the brother. Oldest brother.
Yeah. People look like cannot get rid of the fact that we are naturally created first, like Bereshis and Noach. And we wonder, why is it necessary? They say a story, just to show you how people cannot get rid of their natural animalistic tendency. They say a story which happened in Prague. There's a lot of Jewish stories about Prague. Because Prague was a very big center of Jewish life 300 years ago. Big rabbanim, big rabbis, big scholars. One of them was the famous Rabbi Yecheskel Landa, known as the Noda B'Yehuda. He wrote a book of Responsa. There was Rabbi Snapeshit. Prague was a big... and I was in Prague, even the cemetery. I was in the cemetery there with my wife's grandfather, took me in 1994. You walk into the cemetery, you feel like you walked into one of the greatest yeshivas. Because the cemetery was never destroyed in Prague. Somehow the Germans left it. They destroyed a lot of things in Prague, but the cemetery was left. And you walk in and you see the Maharal, his tombstone is still like fresh standing there. And the Kliyokor, and the Yehuda, and all these people that we always read about and talk about, they're all like they're having fun together in this, the edge of the quarter. You ever in Prague?
Yes, I've been at the cemetery.
Then were you? Oh yes, I remember you went a couple of years ago. So the story is that once two people came to a person walked into the office of Rabbi Yecheskel Landa, the famous Noda B'Yehuda, and he says, "Listen, I got a problem. I am a merchant. I'm a businessman who deals with wheat. I was traveling from one city over here to Prague, and I hired a wagon with a what do you call it? A balagola, a wagon rider. What's the word for it? Kucher. A kucher, exactly. I took a kucher, a wagon rider, to take me over to Prague. And in the middle of the way, he took me, attacked me, took off my clothes. I looked like a businessman. I was wearing, a nice cylinder hat and a suit, a nice coat. He took it off, stole my wallet, put himself up, got dressed with the same clothes that he took for me. So now he looked like this great, wealthy businessman. And Rabbi, I want you to call him and tell him that he has to give me back my money. No. The rabbi invites him. Says, listen, the guy says that the coat is his, the money is his. And the kutcher, the wagon rider says, what is he talking about? Baloney. The guy's making up a story. It's my money, it's my clothes. Rabbi, don't believe him. He's lying. No. What should you do? The rabbi says, let's both of them stay outside. And let me think, how am I going to deal with that? They go, they stay outside, goes by an hour, 2 hours. The rabbi is not calling them. But they waited. The gabbai comes in and says, Rabbi, it's already, these two men are waiting outside already for 7 hours. Should we call them in? No, I'm not ready. I'm still not ready. Okay? 7 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. Okay? Now at that point they are both exhausted, tired, hungry. You can't think about anything straight. You're even forgetting your name. You don't remember who you are. And finally, the rabbi says, go and say, the wagon rider should come in. The kutcher should come in. They are so exhausted. The gabbai goes out. He says, the rabbi wants the kutcher. The kutcher gets up, meaning the guy who is dressed in the merchant's clothes. He forgot that he is acting as a merchant. Now that he lost for a second his consciousness and he was so tired and hungry, when you say that the kutcher come, he jumped. Oh, you jumped, you ganav. You come right here. And it was all, and it was clearly identified who is the liar and who is saying the truth. That's the story they say. What's the moral of the story? That if you are a wagon rider, and if you are a ganav, right, then you're not a businessman, so you can put on this suit and that jacket, and you can act as much that you want. At some point, it's going to come out, because that's your nature, that's who you are. This is who you are. If they're going to exhaust you enough, you're going to lose, consciousness for a little bit, so you're going to say who you are, and that's what happened. Anyway, the question is clear. What's the answer? What? Lech Lecha. This I want to hear an answer. I represented 45 minutes a question. I think we should have at least what would you think? Does it make sense? Do you also believe that Lech Lecha should be first? That Avram's story should be first? No, why not? Why does it have to be that way?
Because that's the way it is.
Because in order to...
Moshe, I always knew that you are a believer and a man of faith, but I didn't know on which level, on which extent. I'm very excited to see. That's the way it's supposed to be. Gewaldig. What a good answer.
To enjoy positive and good, you have to know evil.
To enjoy positive and good, you have to know evil. Okay, you're saying something. You want to explain it a little bit, maybe?
You can't appreciate the positive and the good that you have unless you've experienced and understood the other side. People become envious of somebody else because they see they have more than you, and therefore you feel less. But it's not true. You have to be thankful for what you have. But in order to understand that, you have to see somebody who's less.
So, to make Avram feel good, or to make him sound good, So we compare him to the past, and we say, oh, Avram, as long as you're not like them, you're already good.
He was a naturally righteous person.
What?
He didn't have to have someone tell him what to do. He was a naturally righteous person.
It's always easy to repair. And then destroy.
It's always easy to repair and what?
And repair and fix it, then destroy it.
Explain a little bit.
If it's Aaron will be first, so Adam will be after him.
Yeah.
Aaron will be good, and Adam will destroy it, all good whatever it is. But because of Adam was first, Aaron can fix it.
No, you're all saying good things. You want to say something, Ben?
I mean, I have an idea, but I could be totally wrong.
It's okay.
It just, the concept is like you have something to look forward to, something to compare it to. You know that if you're going through the bad now, that there's something good coming later. I could be 100%.
You get again what?
It's like if you have something, if the good comes right away, you're not looking forward to anything. So like, let's say Abraham came first. All you're looking forward to after that is Adam, basically, betraying God's trust and everything. You're not looking forward to anything positive because it's the other way around.
Sometimes we look back on the past and we say, let the future be like the past. I'm just going to share with you 5 lines from the Tanya. The Rebbe gives us some interesting insight. This is in chapter 27 in Tanya. Chapter 27 in Tanya, now the Rebbe wants to convince a person that if he has to deal with his evil inclination, he shouldn't walk around depressed about it. Okay? This is the message of chapter 27. Basically, don't get depressed, don't get upset just because your evil inclination overcame you. And it talks a whole in philosophical approach how to deal with it. But then he says, and he actually says the words. I'm reading you his words. Velochein, he says, therefore one should not feel depressed or very troubled at heart, right? In times when he's fighting his evil inclination. He says, perhaps this is why you were created. You were created to have a Yetzer Hara, and every few days is going to make you crazy, you're going to be overcome. And then it says like this. There are 2 kinds of divine pleasure. There are 2 types of nachad ruach that Hashem has. One, from the complete annihilation of the sitra achra. Getting rid of the sitra achra. Sitra achra is a term for the evil side. The conversion of bitter to sweet and darkness to light. Okay? This is basically, you take your animal soul, you change him. This is one service that God has a lot of joy. He calls it the service of tzaddikim. Tzaddikim take the evil inclination and change him. But then the Alter Rebbe says there is a second type of nachat, of divine pleasure, that God has pleasure. And this is when the sitra achra is subdued while it is still at its strength and most powerful. Basically, you have the evil inclination and he's full of life and you cannot change him and you can't transform him, but you control him. Hello? You're not going to tell me what to do now? I am going to press delete. I'm not involved with what you are introducing to me. The Alter Rebbe brings from the Zohar that when Yitzchak said, Aseli matamim, make me delicacies, kasher afti, like I love, Yitzchak says the Zohar is referring to God, talking to Yaakov, asking him delicacies in the plural, matamim lashon rabim. This matamim means the two kinds of pleasures. There is sweet, and then there is when you take something sour and you sweeten it up, the Alter Rebbe says. We call it in America sweet and sour, which sometimes is tastier than just sweet or just sour. Right, Jerry? Remember the old days, sweet and sour? Yes or no? Sweet and sour. There's a certain taste which is a mix with sour, but it's controlled by the sweet, it's dominated by the sour, and that somehow is very tasty, more than just sour or more than just sweet. Says the Alter Rebbe, he uses this example, says the tzaddik is dealing with the sweet, but then there is a type of nachas that God has, and he says, this is something when you do by changing sweet and mixing sweet with sour together. The Alter Rebbe is basically telling us something very important about ourselves, why we are bar mitzvah so late, and why Lecha comes after Bereshis in Noach. God did not create this world because he wants to have a place for the angels to have fun. This is not a place which was meant to be a place for tzaddikim only. If that would have been the desire, yes, immediately at creation, Avram would have been introduced, and things would have been perfect. We would have got our good inclination in the beginning, and everything would have been fine. God says, no, let me teach you what's the reality here. There's a Cain, a man of lust, of jealousy, of envy. There is a Chava and an Adam, people of lust. There is a generation of dispersion. There is a generation of destruction. All these things that you are reading in Bereshis and Noach, I want you to be fully aware of. So you know that what I expect from you is to deal with those. To deal with those. And try to subdue them, to control them. This is the nachas you're giving me. Wouldn't be exciting for me, God says, if you would get good inclination at birth, then obviously you got so used and trained to be a tzaddik. Why should you change your life in your 30s? Just because someone just walked into your room, an evil inclination? No, I have my life already set up. No, you're going to have this Yetzer Hara in the beginning. You're going to have a story of Noach and a story of Cain and a story, and you're going to hear and read, and they're going to become a part of our reality. And then I'm going to come and bring you an Avram. And Avram is a man like every other man. And you know what he does? He's searching for their good, and he's ready to stand against the old world and say, I'm going to make choices, and my choices are going to be the ones which is going to recognize that which maybe my father doesn't recognize, my mother didn't recognize. I'm going to follow God. That's what Abraham did. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says is the pleasure of sweet and sour that God enjoys. This is how we make him a world. This is how you build God's creation. So we should be okay with coming to Lech now. Thank God now we have the whole picture. We have Bereshis and Noach. We have Avram. Now we can start working. Everybody have a good night. Have a wonderful good day. And we should continue living with the Parsha.